Maya pressed her small hands against the cold stone wall of the cathedral, watching through the iron gates as wealthy families filed into the warm, golden light beyond. Her stomach cramped with hunger, a familiar companion that had been with her for the 3 days since her last meal. The autumn wind cut through her thin, patched dress like invisible knives, making her shiver uncontrollably. At 12 years old, Maya had learned to survive on the streets of Salem after her mother died from illness the previous winter. The other beggars avoided this particular street corner, claiming it was cursed. Strange things happened here after midnight, they whispered. People disappeared. Screams echoed from the old mansion at the end of the road. But Maya had nowhere else to go, and the rich churchgoers sometimes dropped coins here during Sunday services. As the evening crowd thinned, Maya noticed something unusual near the wrought iron fence surrounding the mysterious Blackwood mansion. A figure lay motionless on the cobblestones, partially hidden in the shadows between 2 gas lamps. Her first instinct was to run. The other street children had taught her that unconscious people meant trouble. But something about the figure's stillness made her pause. Curiosity overcoming fear, Maya crept closer. The person appeared to be a young man, perhaps 17 or 18 years old, dressed in expensive clothes that seemed oddly old-fashioned. His dark coat was made of fine wool, and his boots were polished leather, the kind only wealthy merchants could afford. His pale skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, and his black hair fell across his face in soft waves. Maya knelt beside him, checking for signs of life. His chest rose and fell slowly, but his breathing seemed labored. When she gently touched his forehead, his skin felt ice-cold, much colder than the autumn night could explain. His eyelids fluttered, and she saw his eyes were an unusual deep blue, almost violet in the dim light. "Sir? Can you hear me?" Maya whispered, glancing nervously at the imposing mansion behind them. The building loomed like a sleeping giant, its windows dark except for one on the 3rd floor where a single candle flickered. The young man's lips moved slightly, but no sound emerged. Maya noticed his lips had a bluish tint, and his fingernails showed the same coloring. She had seen this before when the old fisherman died in the harbor. This person was dying. Despite every survival instinct screaming at her to flee, Maya couldn't leave someone to die alone in the street. She had experienced enough loneliness and fear to know she wouldn't wish it on anyone. Making a decision that would change her life forever, she slipped her arms under his shoulders and tried to lift him. The young man was heavier than she expected, but desperation gave her strength. Inch by inch, she managed to drag him toward a small alcove between 2 buildings where wooden crates provided some shelter from the wind. Her muscles ached, and sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cold. Once she had him positioned against the wall, Maya removed her only blanket, a threadbare piece of wool she had found weeks ago, and wrapped it around his shoulders. She knew this might mean freezing to death herself, but something compelled her to help this stranger. "Please don't die," she whispered, settling beside him to share what little warmth her small body could provide. "I don't know who you are, but nobody should die alone." Hours passed. Maya dozed fitfully, waking periodically to check on the mysterious young man. Around midnight, she felt him stir. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face with obvious confusion. "Who are you?" His voice was weak but carried an odd accent, as if English wasn't his first language, though she couldn't place the origin. "I'm Maya. I found you collapsed near the big house. You were almost frozen." She studied his face in the moonlight. Now that he was conscious, she could see he was strikingly handsome, with sharp cheekbones and an aristocratic bearing even in his weakened state. "Maya," he repeated, as if testing the name. "I am Adrian. Adrian Blackwood." His eyes widened suddenly, as if remembering something terrible. "What time is it? How long have I been here?" Maya pointed to the church bell tower visible in the distance. "The midnight bells rang a few minutes ago. I found you around 8 o'clock. Adrian attempted to sit up straighter, wincing in pain. 4 hours. He will be looking for me." Fear flickered across his features, an expression that seemed strange on someone who carried himself with such natural authority. "Who will be looking for you?" Maya asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Before Adrian could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the street. Multiple people were approaching, their boots striking the cobblestones in perfect unison like soldiers marching. Adrian's face went pale, if such a thing were possible given his already ghostly complexion. "You must leave. Now." His voice carried urgent desperation. "These are not people you want to encounter." Maya peered around the corner of their hiding place. 6 men dressed in black approached, moving with predatory grace. They carried themselves like hunters, their eyes scanning every shadow and doorway. Even from a distance, something about them seemed wrong. They moved too quietly for their size, and their eyes reflected light like animals. "I'm not leaving you here alone," Maya whispered firmly. "You can barely sit up." Adrian grabbed her wrist, and she gasped at the ice-cold touch of his fingers. "You don't understand. My father sent them to bring me home. If they find you with me, they will kill you without hesitation." "Your father? But why would your own father want to hurt you?" Adrian's laugh held no humor. "Because I am not supposed to exist outside the mansion walls. Because I am the shame of the Blackwood family. Because I am something that should never have been born." The men in black were closer now, and Maya could hear their voices, speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Their tone was harsh, urgent, like hunting dogs following a scent. "What are you?" Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Adrian met her eyes, and in them she saw centuries of pain and loneliness. "I am the son of the Vampire King. And, tonight, I tried to escape." Maya's mind reeled. Vampires were creatures from horror stories, tales told to frighten children into good behavior. Yet looking at Adrian's pale skin, his cold touch, his obvious fear of these men, the pieces began forming a terrifying picture. "That's impossible," she whispered. "My father is Marcus Blackwood, lord of all vampires in this region. For 18 years, he has kept me prisoner in that mansion, training me to become like him. Tonight, I finally found the courage to refuse." Adrian's voice grew stronger with each word, as if speaking the truth gave him power. The footsteps stopped directly outside their hiding place. Maya held her breath, pressing herself against the wall. Through a gap in the crates, she could see polished black boots and the hem of a long coat. "The scent ends here," one of the men said in accented English. The young master was definitely in this location. Another voice, deeper and more menacing, responded. "Search every building." Marcus grows impatient. "The boy must be returned before dawn, or we all face punishment." Maya felt Adrian tense beside her. She could hear his breathing become more rapid, almost panicked. Without thinking, she reached out and took his frozen hand in both of hers, trying to offer whatever comfort she could. The warmth of her touch seemed to calm him slightly. He squeezed her fingers gently, careful not to hurt her with his supernatural strength. For 20 minutes, they listened to the sounds of the men searching nearby buildings. Doors were kicked open, furniture overturned, glass shattered. The searchers showed no concern for property or the people who might live in these places. Finally, the footsteps began to recede. The men were moving toward the harbor district, their voices fading into the distance. "They'll be back," Adrian said quietly. "They always find me eventually." Maya studied his profile in the moonlight. Despite his supernatural nature, despite the danger surrounding him, she felt drawn to this lost, lonely young man. She recognized the look in his eyes because she had seen it in her own reflection. It was the look of someone who had never known safety or unconditional love. "Why did you try to escape tonight?" she asked. Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of years of suppressed emotion. "Tomorrow is my 19th birthday. According to vampire law, that is when I must complete the transformation and become a full vampire. When I must make my first kill." Maya's blood chilled, but she didn't pull away from him. "What happens if you refuse?" "My father will force the change. He has ways of compelling obedience that no one can resist. Once the transformation is complete, I will lose my human conscience. I will become a predator, a killer, just like him." Maya thought about her mother, who had always taught her that every person deserved a chance at redemption, that good existed in even the darkest hearts. Looking at Adrian, she saw someone fighting against a destiny he never chose, someone who valued human life enough to risk everything to avoid taking it. "There has to be another way," she said finally. Adrian turned to look at her fully, studying her face with wonder. "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be? Most humans flee in terror when they learn what I am. Even now, you sit here holding my hand, offering me your only blanket, when wisdom would dictate you run and never look back." Maya shrugged. "I've been living on these streets for almost a year. I've seen plenty of monsters, and most of them were completely human. You haven't hurt me. You're more concerned about my safety than your own. That tells me more about who you are than what you are." For the first time since she had found him, Adrian smiled. It was a small, hesitant expression, but it transformed his entire face. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Maya." "Probably both," she admitted with a grin. A new sound reached their ears, the toll of the church bell marking midnight. Adrian's expression grew troubled again. "I must find somewhere to hide before dawn. If my father's men find me, they will drag me back to face his wrath. But if I'm discovered by humans during daylight hours..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Maya understood. Sunlight was deadly to vampires, according to every story she had ever heard. "I know a place," Maya said suddenly. "The old warehouse by the docks. It's been abandoned for years, and the roof is solid. No sunlight can get through, and there are dozens of hiding places if anyone comes looking." Adrian stared at her in amazement. "You would help me? Even knowing what I am, what my family is capable of?" Maya stood up, brushing dust from her tattered dress. "Everyone deserves a chance to choose their own path. Come on. We need to move before those men circle back." As Adrian struggled to his feet, Maya could see the internal battle playing out across his features. Accepting her help meant putting her in danger. But, without assistance, he would certainly be recaptured before dawn. "If my father discovers you helped me," he said quietly, "he will not show mercy. Marcus Blackwood has ruled through fear for over 3 centuries. He does not tolerate interference in family matters." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Then, we'll just have to make sure he doesn't find out." Together, they slipped from their hiding place into the shadows of Salem's narrow streets. Maya led the way, using every trick she had learned during her months of survival to avoid the main roads and well-lit areas. Behind her, Adrian moved with surprising quiet for someone so weakened, his supernatural nature allowing him to navigate the darkness with ease. As they made their way toward the harbor, Maya couldn't help but wonder what she was getting herself into. She was risking her life for someone she had just met, someone who belonged to a world of darkness and danger she could barely comprehend. But, when she glanced back and saw the hope flickering in Adrian's unusual eyes, she knew she had made the right choice. Sometimes, she thought, the most important decisions were made with the heart rather than the head. The warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows and weathered walls offering the promise of sanctuary. At least until the next sunset, when the hunt would surely begin again. The abandoned warehouse smelled of rust, rotting wood, and decades of neglect. Maya led Adrian through a gap in the wooden planking that she had discovered weeks ago during one of her searches for shelter. Inside, shafts of moonlight filtered through broken boards, creating a maze of silver and shadow. "This should work," Maya whispered, guiding him toward a corner where old shipping crates were stacked high enough to create a small room. "The sun never reaches this spot, and there are 3 different ways out if we need to run." Adrian sank gratefully onto a pile of canvas tarps, his supernatural stamina finally giving way to exhaustion. "You've thought of everything," he murmured with admiration. "How long have you been living like this?" Maya settled beside him, pulling her knees to her chest for warmth. 10 months. Since my mother died of fever last winter." She spoke matter-of-factly, but Adrian caught the pain that flickered across her features. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "To lose one's mother so young." "What about your mother?" Maya asked, then immediately regretted the question when she saw Adrian's expression darken. "I never knew her. My father told me she was human, but she died giving birth to me." He considered it a weakness that he had loved her. Adrian's voice carried centuries of inherited bitterness. In vampire society, emotions are seen as flaws to be eliminated. Maya studied his profile in the dim light. But, you feel emotions. I can see them when you speak. That is precisely the problem. I am neither fully vampire nor fully human. My father hoped that as I matured, the vampire nature would dominate. Instead, I seem to be becoming more human with each passing year. Adrian flexed his fingers, examining his pale skin. I feel guilt about the actions of my kind. I experience sympathy for their victims. These are unacceptable traits in a future vampire lord. A noise outside the warehouse made them both freeze. Footsteps circled the building slowly, deliberately. Maya pressed her finger to her lips and crept toward a gap between the boards to peer out. 3 figures in dark clothing moved around the perimeter like wolves stalking prey. Even in the moonlight, their movements seemed unnaturally fluid. These weren't the same men from earlier, Maya realized with growing dread. These were different hunters. How many people work for your father? She whispered when she returned to Adrian. Marcus commands loyalty from dozens of vampires throughout the region. He also employs human servants who have been convinced to serve him faithfully. Adrian's expression was grim. They will search every building in Salem if necessary. The footsteps stopped directly outside their hiding place. Maya held her breath as shadows passed by the gap in the wall. A voice spoke in that strange language she had heard earlier, harsh consonants that seemed to echo with unnatural resonance. The scent is faint but present, came a translation in accented English. The young master was here recently. Adrian tensed beside her, his hands clenching into fists. Maya could see the internal struggle playing out across his features. Part of him wanted to surrender, to spare her the danger of continued association with him. But, a stronger part, the part that had driven him to escape in the first place, rebelled against that fate. After several tense minutes, the voices faded as the searchers moved on to investigate other buildings. But, Maya knew they would return with more men, more thorough methods. We can't stay here, she said quietly. They'll be back with dogs or something worse. Adrian nodded reluctantly. But, where can we go? Sunrise is only a few hours away, and I cannot travel during daylight. Maya had been thinking about this problem since they left the street corner. There was one place in Salem where even the Vampire King's men might hesitate to search, but suggesting it would require revealing a secret she had kept for months. There is somewhere, she said slowly. But, you have to promise me something first. Anything. Promise me that no matter what you see or hear, you won't think less of me. And, you won't tell anyone else about this place. Adrian studied her face intently. I promise. But, Maya, what aren't you telling me? Instead of answering directly, Maya stood and gathered her few belongings. Follow me. But, stay low and move quietly. They slipped out of the warehouse through a different exit, Maya leading them through a maze of back alleys and forgotten passages she had mapped during her months on the street. Adrian followed without question, though she could sense his growing curiosity. After 20 minutes of careful travel, they arrived at what appeared to be a dead end, a narrow alley blocked by a brick wall covered in ivy. Maya pushed aside the vines to reveal a hidden door, barely wide enough for one person to pass through. This leads to the old part of the cemetery, she explained in a whisper. The section that hasn't been used for burials in over 50 years. There are underground chambers where they used to store bodies during winter when the ground was too frozen to dig. Adrian's eyes widened with understanding. You've been living in a crypt? Maya's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. It's not as horrible as it sounds. It's dry, it's hidden, and nobody ever goes there except me. I've made it comfortable. They descended a narrow stone staircase that led deep underground. The air grew cooler with each step, carrying the scent of earth and old stone rather than decay. Maya had chosen this location carefully, selecting chambers that had been empty for decades rather than those containing recent remains. At the bottom of the stairs, she lit a candle from her pocket and led Adrian through a corridor lined with empty stone alcoves. The flickering light revealed that Maya had indeed made this place livable. Clean blankets were folded neatly in one alcove, along with a small collection of books she had found or been given. Another alcove held her few cooking supplies and a store of food. Candles were placed strategically throughout the space, providing warmth and light. "This is remarkable," Adrian said, genuine admiration in his voice. "You've created a home from nothing." Maya set the candle in a brass holder she had salvaged from the church. "It's not much, but it's mine. And, more importantly, it's the one place in Salem where your father's men are unlikely to search." "Why?" "Because even vampires have superstitions about consecrated ground," Maya explained. "This cemetery was blessed by the church when it was established. According to legend, supernatural creatures cannot enter without invitation from someone who belongs here." Adrian looked around the chamber with new understanding. "And you belong here because you live here?" "Exactly. So as long as I invite you in and stay with you, you should be safe until we can figure out what to do next." Adrian sank onto one of Maya's blankets, overwhelmed by her generosity. "You've given up your secret sanctuary for someone you met only hours ago. Why?" Maya sat across from him, pulling another blanket around her shoulders. "Because I know what it's like to be alone and scared with nowhere to run. Because I've seen enough cruelty in this world to recognize genuine kindness when I encounter it." She met his gaze steadily. "And because something tells me that helping you is the right thing to do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the candle flame dancing between them. Outside, the sounds of the search continued, but they seemed distant and muffled by the stone walls and earth overhead. "Tell me about your life before," Adrian said eventually. "What was it like to have a normal family?" Maya's expression softened with memory. "My mother was a seamstress. We lived in a small room above Mrs. Henderson's shop on Maple Street. It wasn't much, but it was warm and safe. My mother would sing while she worked, and she always made sure I had enough to eat, even when times were difficult." "She sounds wonderful." She was. "She taught me to read using the Bible and whatever newspapers people discarded. She said education was the one thing no one could take away from you." Maya smiled sadly. "I think she would have liked you. She always said you could judge a person's character by how they treated those who had nothing to offer in return." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "I've never had anyone speak of me with such kindness." "In the vampire world, relationships are based on power and fear. Affection is seen as weakness." "That sounds lonely." "It is. I have spent my entire life surrounded by creatures who share my blood but not my values. I have never had a friend, never experienced trust or genuine care." Adrian's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Until tonight." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "You're my friend too, Adrian. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." As if summoned by their conversation about friendship, a new sound echoed through the cemetery above them. Heavy footsteps, far too many to count, surrounded the area. Voices called out in that harsh, foreign language, coordinating what sounded like a comprehensive search. "They found us," Adrian breathed, the color draining from his already pale face. Maya blew out the candle, plunging them into complete darkness. "Not necessarily. They might just be searching everywhere systematically. As long as we're quiet and don't give them a reason to enter, we should be safe." But even as she spoke the words, Maya could hear something that chilled her blood. The footsteps above weren't random. They were moving in a pattern, as if the searchers knew exactly where to look. A new voice joined the others, speaking in English with a commanding tone that carried absolute authority. "I know you can hear me, Adrian. You cannot hide from me forever." Adrian grabbed Maya's hand in the darkness, his grip tight with terror. "That's him," he whispered. "That's Marcus. My father." The voice continued, growing closer to their hiding place. "You have 1 hour to surrender yourself, boy. If you do not emerge, I will begin killing every person in this district until you do. Starting with the church orphans sleeping in the alley behind St. Mary's." Maya felt Adrian tremble beside her. She knew he was calculating the cost of his freedom against the lives of innocent people. It was exactly the kind of impossible choice a creature like Marcus would design. "He's bluffing," Maya whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "No," Adrian replied quietly. "He never bluffs. Marcus has ruled for 3 centuries by demonstrating that defying him always costs more than obedience. The footsteps directly overhead stopped. Maya could practically feel the weight of the Vampire King's presence pressing down through the stone and earth. 59 minutes remaining, Adrian. Choose wisely. As the footsteps moved away, Maya and Adrian remained frozen in the darkness, both understanding that their time was running out. In less than an hour, Adrian would have to choose between his freedom and the lives of innocent people. And Maya would have to decide how far she was willing to go to help a friend who might be worth dying for. In the suffocating darkness of the underground chamber, Maya's mind raced through possibilities. 58 minutes until innocent people died because of Adrian's choice to be free. 58 minutes to find a solution that seemed impossible. There has to be another way, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible even in the complete silence. Adrian's hand tightened around hers. There isn't. I've spent 18 years looking for alternatives. Marcus always wins because he's willing to do things others cannot imagine. He will kill those orphans slowly, publicly, and he will make sure I hear every scream. Maya thought about the children who slept in the alley behind St. Mary's Church. She had shared food with some of them during particularly harsh nights. Little Timothy, who couldn't be more than 7 years old. Sarah, who sang lullabies to the younger ones when they cried from hunger. The baby that Mrs. Cooper had been caring for since his mother died in childbirth. What if we could get to them first? Maya asked suddenly. Warn them to run, hide them somewhere safe? My father will simply choose different victims. He has an entire city of innocent people to threaten. Adrian's voice carried the weight of terrible certainty. The only way to save them is for me to surrender. But Maya's mind had caught on a different thread. You said your father rules through fear because people believe he always wins. What if that weren't true anymore? I don't understand. Maya relit the candle, needing to see Adrian's face for this conversation. What if someone stood up to him and lived? What if people saw that the Vampire King could be defied? Adrian stared at her in the flickering light. Maya, you're talking about challenging a creature who has killed thousands of people over 3 centuries. He has powers you cannot comprehend. But he's not all-powerful, is he? Otherwise he wouldn't need to threaten innocents to force your cooperation. He'd simply compel you directly. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. You're right about that. His ability to control other vampires is absolute, but I'm only half vampire. My human heritage provides some resistance to his mental dominion. That's why he must rely on emotional manipulation instead. Maya felt a spark of hope. Then, maybe there are other weaknesses we can exploit. Such as? Maya had spent months observing the people of Salem, learning their secrets and vulnerabilities as a matter of survival. Your father commands loyalty through fear, right? But fear only works if people believe the threat is real. What if we could make him look weak or foolish in front of his followers? You're suggesting we embarrass the Vampire King? Adrian's tone carried a mixture of admiration and terror. Maya, that would be suicide. Maybe. But it might also be freedom. Maya leaned forward, her eyes bright with desperate determination. Help me understand how vampire society works. What would damage his authority most? Adrian was silent for several minutes, weighing the dangers against the impossible hope Maya was offering. Finally, he began to speak. Vampire hierarchy is based on age, power, and the ability to command absolute obedience. Marcus maintains control because no one has ever successfully challenged him. If someone were to defy him publicly and escape consequences, it would plant seeds of doubt among his followers. What kind of challenge would be most damaging? Taking something he claims as his own. Proving that his word is not absolute law. Adrian's eyes met Maya's in the candlelight. Like helping his heir escape permanently. Maya felt her pulse quicken. That's it. We don't just hide you until sunrise. We get you completely away from Salem, somewhere he can't follow. Where could I possibly go that he couldn't find me? Maya thought about the stories she had heard from travelers and merchants who passed through Salem. The new territories west. Places so remote and wild that even vampire kings would have difficulty maintaining power there. You could start over, build a different life. And leave you here to face his wrath when he discovers you helped me? Who says I'm staying? Adrian stared at her in shock. You would leave everything behind? Your home, such as it is? Maya laughed softly. Adrian, I live in a crypt and beg for food. What exactly would I be leaving behind? Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't end up collapsing in another street somewhere. For the first time since she had found him, Adrian smiled with genuine hope. You would really come with me? Leave Salem forever? I've been surviving alone for months. I think I can handle surviving with a friend who has supernatural strength and speed. Maya grinned. Besides, you'll need someone who knows how to live without luxury. I'm guessing vampire princes don't learn many practical survival skills. You're right about that, Adrian admitted with a rueful laugh. I can discuss philosophy and ancient literature, but I've never cooked a meal or found shelter in the wilderness. A sound from above interrupted their planning. Footsteps were approaching their hiding place again, moving with purposeful direction. 43 minutes remaining, Marcus's voice echoed through the cemetery. I grow impatient, boy. Perhaps I should begin with just one orphan, to demonstrate my sincerity. Maya grabbed Adrian's arm. We have to move now. Do you have enough strength to travel? I think so. But, Maya, even if we could escape Salem, how would we survive the journey? I need shelter from sunlight during the day, and we have no supplies, no money. Maya was already gathering her few belongings. I know the roads out of Salem. There are abandoned buildings, caves, places where you could hide during daylight. As for supplies. She paused, an idea forming. Your father's men are all here in the cemetery, right? Yes, he would want maximum force for this confrontation. Then, the mansion is probably lightly guarded. You know the layout, the location of valuables, supplies we could use for travel. Adrian's eyes widened with understanding. You're suggesting we rob my father's house while he's hunting for us here. I'm suggesting we take what belongs to you anyway. You're his heir, aren't you? That makes it inheritance, not theft. Despite everything, Adrian laughed. Your logic is questionable, but your courage is extraordinary. He stood, testing his strength. The mansion has a travel fund Marcus keeps for emergencies. Gold coins, jewelry that can be traded. If we could reach it. Where in the mansion? His private study, 3rd floor, behind a painting of a wolf hunt. But, Maya, the risks are no greater than staying here and letting him win. Maya blew out the candle and tucked it into her pocket. Besides, sometimes the best hiding place is the last place someone would think to look. They climbed the stone stairs slowly, listening carefully for sounds of the search party. The cemetery above was eerily quiet, all the activity having moved toward the church district where the threatened orphans slept. Maya led them through a different route this time, using shadows and abandoned buildings to mask their movement. The streets were empty except for Marcus's searchers, who were systematically checking every building near St. Mary's Church. The Blackwood mansion loomed before them like a sleeping fortress. Most of its windows were dark, and Maya could see only 2 guards patrolling the grounds. The vampire king's arrogance was working in their favor. He had never imagined that his prey would dare enter his own stronghold. The servants' entrance, Adrian whispered, pointing to a small door on the side of the building. It's usually unlocked for night staff. They approached carefully, keeping to the shadows cast by massive oak trees that surrounded the property. The guards were focused on watching the main approaches, not expecting anyone to emerge from within their perimeter. The servants' door opened silently under Adrian's touch. Inside, the mansion was a maze of corridors and staircases, all decorated with dark paintings and heavy furniture that seemed designed to intimidate rather than comfort. Adrian moved through his childhood home with the confidence of familiarity, leading Maya up servant staircases to avoid the main halls where they might encounter remaining guards. The house felt oppressive to Maya, filled with an energy that made her skin crawl. This is it, Adrian whispered as they reached an ornate wooden door on the 3rd floor. My father's private study. The room beyond was everything Maya had imagined a vampire king's domain would be. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with ancient books, furniture that looked older than the town itself. But Adrian moved directly to a large painting depicting hunters on horseback pursuing a massive wolf. Behind the painting, exactly as he had described, was a wall safe. Adrian's fingers moved over the combination lock with practiced ease. "How do you know the combination?" Maya whispered. "It's the date my mother died. Marcus may be a monster, but he's also sentimental about his losses." The safe clicked open, revealing stacks of gold coins, precious jewelry, and official documents. Adrian quickly filled a leather pouch with coins and selected several pieces of jewelry that could be easily traded. "This should be enough to get us to the Western Territories and establish new lives." As they prepared to leave, Maya noticed something else in the safe, a miniature portrait of a young woman with kind eyes and Adrian's distinctive features. "Is that my mother?" Adrian confirmed softly. He took the portrait, tucking it carefully into his coat. "The only image of her that exists." A sound from downstairs made them both freeze. The front door had opened, and multiple sets of footsteps were entering the mansion. "He's returning," Adrian breathed. "We waited too long." Maya looked around the study frantically, then noticed an open window that led onto a section of roof. "This way. We can climb down the outside of the building." They scrambled through the window onto the slate tiles just as voices echoed up the main staircase. Marcus was shouting orders in that harsh vampire language, clearly enraged by something. "The search of the church district was unsuccessful," Adrian translated in a whisper as they crept across the roof. "He's returning to plan a more thorough approach to motivation." They reached the edge of the roof where a trellis offered a precarious path to the ground. Maya went first, her months of surviving on the streets having taught her to climb and balance on unstable surfaces. Adrian followed, his supernatural agility making the descent easier despite his earlier weakness. Just as they reached the ground, a window exploded outward from Marcus's study. Glass shards rained down as an inhuman roar of rage echoed across the mansion grounds. "He's discovered the theft," Adrian said grimly. "Now he'll be hunting us for more than just my defiance." But Maya was already running toward the tree line, pulling Adrian with her. "Then, we better make sure he never finds us." Behind them, the mansion erupted into activity. Lights blazed in every window, and the sound of doors slamming and voices shouting filled the night air. But Maya and Adrian were already disappearing into the maze of Salem's backstreets, heading toward the western road and whatever freedom they could make for themselves. As they ran, Maya couldn't help but smile. For the first time in months, she wasn't running away from something. She was running toward a future she could choose for herself, alongside someone who valued her enough to share his dangerous journey. "Where exactly are we going?" Adrian asked as they paused to catch their breath at the edge of town. Maya looked up at the stars, using the navigation skills her mother had taught her. "West. Toward the territories where people don't ask too many questions about where you came from." She grinned at him in the moonlight. "Ready for an adventure, Adrian Blackwood?" Adrian smiled back, his pale features transformed by hope and determination. "Ready, Maya. For the first time in my life, I'm ready for anything." Together, they walked into the darkness beyond Salem's borders, leaving behind a world of fear and control for whatever challenges and opportunities awaited them in the unknown territories of the American frontier. Behind them, the Vampire King's rage echoed across the night, but ahead lay the promise of lives they could define for themselves. Maya had found someone worth saving, and Adrian had discovered that freedom was something worth fighting for. Their journey was just beginning, but they were no longer traveling alone.